She works in the Office of Local Government. I'll call it a little-known office. I just learned about it by finding the report earlier this year, but a wealth of information there. Historical for Rawlins County, and also comparative to other parts of the state, to neighboring counties, to whatever. So I think there's a wealth of information there that we can tap into a little bit more. She's been with K-State for over 10 years, and she works with these numbers and all this. So I will turn it over to Rebecca for an educational presentation.
Thank you.
Does it help if I kill those lights? Okay, go with that.
Well, like you said, I'm Rebecca Bishop. I'm with the Office of Local Government at K-State. We're part of Research and Extension, also part of the Ag Econ program at K-State. And this is what I do. I was going to thank Jo for inviting me out today. I don't get to do this very often, but she's not here, so you can pass my thanks on to her.
Absolutely.
When she called me, she explained that the property valuations were changing, increasing quite a bit, and wanted me to maybe put something together that could help explain what effect that might have on the mill levy and property taxes and that sort of thing. So the main purpose today is to help explain that. To do that, I think it's helpful to look at kind of the fiscal situation of Rawlins County before, and then compare Rawlins County maybe with some neighboring counties or similar sized counties, and then get into the mill levy, what happens when property valuations go up or down or whatever, and go from there. So part one is fiscal trends of Rawlins County. Our office puts together this fiscal condition and trends report. There's lots of things that impact fiscal conditions, and sometimes being able to find concise information in one spot, helping explain that, is a little bit challenging. And so that's our aim with this report, is to gather data of what has been going on in the county and present it in one place for commissioners and other officials to look at and see. In this report, we utilize the Kansas Fiscal Database. This is a database that our office put together, and it has detailed financial information for all Kansas counties from 1989 to 2012. We get it from the information from the Kansas Department of Administration, the Division of Accounts and Reports. Each county sends in their budgets, and then we get them from there, and we sort everything out. So I'm sure most of you probably understand that there's three types of numbers in a budget. There's the prior year actual, the current year, and then the budgeted numbers. And we use the actual numbers. The year that you're in, that's what you hope to spend. The budget is what you hope you will be able to spend the next year, but the actual numbers are what you really did spend, and they reflect what really went on in the county. We know this kind of has a 2-year lag in our data, or creates a 2-year lag in our data, but we think it's probably the most accurate. That's just a header of what a lot of the budgets look like, and so that's where we get our numbers from. In this database, we separate out the revenues and expenditures. We have, I can't even remember how many on each side, but it's important to note there's no correlation between the two. We don't account for revenues or expenditures by revenue source or anything like that. We just present what you're spending, what you're bringing in, and go from there. So a few definitions first of various things in the report, or things I'll talk about. Inflation. This is a big one with numbers. It's just an general increase in prices and a decrease in the purchasing power of money. $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow, or it's worth less than $1, 5 years ago. I think back to when my mom told me she bought her first car not long after she got out of high school, and she paid $1,900 for it, brand new car. And at the time I thought, wow, I wish $1,900 would buy me a car now, but I don't really think that's going to happen, or a brand new car at least. And so I just ran the numbers the other day just to see what $1,900 would be in today's value. And I would need $11,000 today to have the same purchasing power as 1900, back in the early 70s. So actual dollars is just the dollar amount at a specific time. So the actual dollar was $1,900 in 1970, but that doesn't account for inflation. If we want to account for inflation, then we have to adjust the dollars. And we do that by using the chain price index, and we adjust to a single year's value. And in this report, since it's the 2012 numbers that we're using, we adjust all the other numbers to 2012 values. It takes the effects of inflation out of the equation, and so then you can focus on the real forces behind the changing trends. And then another thing I'll talk about throughout all of this is per capita. We present most of our data on a per capita basis, and that's just simply an amount per person in the county. We take the total amount divided by the population, and then we know how much you're spending or receiving per person in the county. It's an easier and more accurate way to compare yourselves to other counties or to the state average as a whole, because obviously if you have a large county, there's going to be more expenditures. For example, if you looked at the county where I'm from, Riley County, we have a population of 75,000. So obviously our road and bridge expenditures are going to be more. Though I have to say, I can tell you guys are spending road and bridge dollars well. 25 coming in was quite nice and smooth. All new stripes, it was nice. But our road and bridge budget is obviously larger, but maybe on a per capita basis it's not. We don't know, but that's how you could be able to tell. Is Riley County spending the same as Rawlins County on their highways? We look at the per person value. So this first slide is total and per capita expenditures, and we present both the actual numbers, the dollar of the day, and the real numbers when we adjust it and take out the effects of inflation. It's really interesting to see, to me anyway, these are the increases when you just look at the actual numbers. And it seems like, wow, your expenditures on a per capita basis went up 24%. That seems like quite a bit. But when you take out the effects of inflation, they increased 5%. That's not quite as much. So Rawlins County, on a per capita basis in 2012, was spending $1,528 per person on just total expenditures. This is our big three. This category, or this slide represents the three kind of major categories in county spending. There's the general fund, road and bridge, and law enforcement. General represents all of the things that support county government, county treasurer, coroner, appraiser, anything like that. Road and bridge is, as it sounds, and law enforcement supports the sheriff or the law enforcement building, the communication center, and things like that. With total and per capita revenues, we have the same type of situation. They didn't increase as much as it might look like initially, but they still went up, not quite as much as expenditures, but you still did have an increase in revenues. $1,466 is what you're bringing in per person in the county. And this is our big three as far as revenues are concerned: property tax, sales tax, and special highway. Special highway funds have went down, I think, universally across all Kansas counties. So that number the decrease is not at all uncommon. Property tax, 8% increase in per capita numbers. sales tax, a larger increase in per capita numbers as well.
Rebecca,
Yes,
the special highway, is the source of that money the state?
yes.
Okay.
It's the special highway gas tax, and the
Okay.
state doles that out to counties, but they have reduced the portion that they're giving to counties now.
Okay,
So-
just clarifying, I'm sure.
What's the allocation formula on that? Is it on a, when the state allocates that special highway tax, I would have no way of knowing whether they allocate to Rawlins County based on population, by miles, by.
I am not 100% sure. I think it has to do with a formula that is based on both population and miles of road in the county.
That would make sense, but I just was curious.
Yeah. And then these are your real tangible assessed valuation numbers adjusted for inflation. You've had an 11% decrease. That's obviously going to change. And so next year the report might look quite different. Per capita, it's increased. Let's see. So then we'll look a little bit at how you compare to other counties. We selected a group of peer counties. We based it on population. We picked 7 larger, 7 smaller. And these 15 counties end up being somewhat similar in terms of assessed valuation, personal income, revenue, and expenditures. We show the data for the individual counties as well as the 15 county average and then the Kansas County average. So there's Rawlins right in the middle with population. You guys rank 4th in terms of personal income, so on the higher end of personal income. Assessed valuation was 14th among the counties, which again, that's going to change. Total revenues and total expenditures both were 15th. So you spent and brought in the least of the counties in the study. These are just the population numbers. You can see you had the 5th largest increase over the 5-year period. Logan County grew the most at 7.4%, and Elk County fell or declined in population 10.7%. As far as real per capita total expenditures, over the 5-year period, I know earlier I showed 2004 to 2012. For this, I just do the last 5 years. But the per capita total expenditures declined 1.1%. The average county in the study declined 7.4%, whereas the Kansas County average saw an increase in expenditures. This slide, we take the big 3 that we call it, but we also add employee benefits because that's a significant expenditure for county governments. And we look at what percent or proportion of the total expenditures in the county fall in one of these categories. 75, almost 76% of all of the expenditures for Rawlins County are in these 4 areas. Let's see.
Is public safety and law enforcement, are those different at all, or?
Public safety in this instance includes district court, juvenile justice, jail, and sheriff,
Okay.
law enforcement building, all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So it has a little bit more in it than the last slide.
Okay.
Have to look at my notes to see where Rawlins ranked, sorry. I can't. 4th in proportion spent on road and bridge, 8th on public safety, 9th on employee benefits, and 6th on the general fund. So pretty much right in the middle of the peer counties. The proportion you spent on those things is pretty much in the middle. And then we look at the per capita total revenues. When you look at just that 5-year period, there was a decline of 8.5% in revenues. Stanton County, I think they're a unique situation. I believe there's some natural gas stuff going on, and so they have a lot higher. Back on the expenditure slide, their expenditures were about the same as well per person. So they're kind of an outlier and draw the average up a bit for the 15 counties. But Rawlins County was very similar to the Kansas County average.
But we're way at the bottom of this, right?
Yes.
So although the county average is low, those peer counties were at the lowest per capita revenue
Correct.
by quite a way.
I think the next one would be Elk County.
You flip places with Cheyenne. Cheyenne County's got some funny things going on in them, because that one chart showed their expenses blowing up,
Yes.
and I'm wondering what in the world did they decide to tie into over there that was so expensive?
I'm not for sure. I could look at their budget
That's
and
the neighbor to the west,
Mhm.
so it's like,
They had a gas transfer station. And, valuation on gas was way up. They lost that transfer station a couple of years ago. They lost it. I can't remember exactly, but they lost about $20 million of assessed valuation to the county.
because of the,
Because of the loss of that transfer station. No different, they won't regain tremendous amount of valuation because of the oil in the northwest.
well, natural resources, the oil or the gas resource is a big player in the whole mix.
it can be, yes.
And it can be. And it can be a fair weather friend too.
Right.
Yep.
And that's, I guess that's another thing I meant to point out is that it's important to know what's going on in the county at the time to see this change. Elk County, their total revenues increased 42%. What was going on in Elk County that drew that up? Did they just get a new bond in 2012? That could have pulled it up. Same as if they had gotten if another county got a bond in 2008, then that's going to look like a lot more revenue in 1 year. Yes, sir.
Isn't that affected though on the mill levy that you set, on your revenues? Because your revenues are dictated by how many the mill levy. So it kind of depends on how that mill levy was set as to what your revenue is going to be, isn't that correct?
Your property tax revenue would be dictated by the mill levy.
Two things, the appraisal, the appraised value and the mill levy. I mean, if you change the value, if the values go up and the mill stays the same, that'll raise your revenue.
If the mill levy stays the same and the valuation goes up,
Yeah, the appraised value goes up.
yes, it will raise property taxes.
So within these numbers, are you saying that if there were a bond issue, that's going to affect the revenue in any given year
Yes.
Correct.
for that bond? So you kind of, that's where you got to get to the story.
Right.
To understand.
What was going on in that county at the time, you
Okay.
know, we've seen a lot of counties take on new bonds, and for some project, that's going to spike their revenues for that year. The next year, that's not going to be there. They're going to be paying on it or whatever, spending it, and so.
Okay.
This is, this is the revenue side of the big three, only this time we add the other revenue. The demand transfers represents special highway. It used to include LAVTR, the local ad valorem tax reduction, which the state keeps promising back to counties, but I don't think a county has seen any revenue yet. So right now, for us, for our reporting, it just includes the special highway fund, or the special highway tax. We add other revenue into this one. That would be things like a bond, gas royalties, miscellaneous income, that sort of thing. So for Rawlins County, 88.5% fell in these categories.
I'm wondering though, you said that Stanton County had that high revenue, but 80% is shown under property tax. You sure your royalty tax isn't setting under property tax in that chart? Because that seems awful, that's an outlier. Well, Hamilton's not much different. And Graham's got oil activity too. The county I looked at that's got much natural resource seems to have a high property tax. So I'm wondering if that royalty is hiding in the property tax column.
It could be if this land is being leased to the oil companies, the value of the land has went up. The property owners are being paid royalties for what's taken off their land. Well, their property tax is going to be up too. So in a roundabout way, yeah, royalties could kind of be in there, but it would be under the property tax.
Secondary effect, not the primary.
Correct. But looking at the property tax column, in all but 2 of the counties, it accounts for well over half of the revenue that the counties bring in. Even the 15 county average and the Kansas County average is still over half of, it's a significant source of revenue. Looking at, since I'm talking more later about property tax, I put a few more property tax slides in, but the real property tax numbers on a per capita basis, you can see Rawlins County increased 15%. There again, Stanton's had a high property tax, for quite some time, but they bring in $4,005 per person in the county in property tax, whereas Rawlins brings in $939. Then we look at the real per capita assessed valuation. Rawlins County saw a decrease, but again, knowing that's going to change, it's nothing alarming or anything like that. The decline in Rawlins County wasn't as much as the 15 county average or the Kansas County average. And then this is the total assessed valuation for the varying counties. Stanton County lost almost 30% of their valuation over the 5-year period, whereas Logan County increased by 37%. Here we have the county levy that each of these counties have. But honestly, this slide is pretty much meaningless. It doesn't matter a whole lot what the neighboring county's mill levy is. Everyone wants to know. I think it's just normal. But it doesn't mean a whole lot. It's based on their assessed valuation. It's based on the amount of money that they need. And all of those factors set the mill levy. So we'll look at what plays into that now. So property taxes, also called real estate taxes, ad valorem taxes. I'm sure I've heard it called some other less nice things, but that's what it is. It's the largest source of income for counties. Like I showed you before, it was 64% of Rawlins County's revenue in 2012. There are multiple taxing entities within a taxing district. And each of these taxing entities set their own budget, set their own mill levy, and use that money to fund various services. This property tax is calculated based on the money needed by each taxing entity and the property valuation. So just to run through, I think I was under the impression from Joe there would be more general public, so some of this is probably redundant.
Yeah, we've got the group on average is pretty familiar with this,
Yeah.
way more than the general public.
So, We talked, what I was going to talk about is just the appraised value. It's the fair market value of your home or your property. It could also be the use value of your property. The assessed value is just the percentage of appraised value based on the property class on which you pay tax. This is the various property classes in Kansas and the percentage of your value of which you would pay tax on. For most of these examples, I use the residential one just because a lot of people own homes, and so it's easy to kind of do it that way. So a mill, 1/1000th of the total property valuation within a taxing district. The mill levy, total number of mills required to generate the budgeted funds for a taxing entity. And that taxing entity would be a political body that's authorized to levy taxes for the purpose of running operating their government. City of Atwood levies a tax, Rawlins County levies a tax, USD 105 levies a tax, the state of Kansas levies a tax, and then there's special districts that I don't do much work with. I'm not sure what kinds might exist here in Rawlins, but in some places there's like hospital districts that can levy taxes as well. So calculating the assessed valuation, we take the appraised value times that property class tax multiplier, and we get our assessed value. I said, let's say we have a home that's appraised at $70,000. Since it's a residential property, it would be taxed or assessed tax on 11.5% of that. So our assessed value would be $8,050. Looking at the mill levy, then that's the tax rate that's applied to the assessed value of the property. It's the number of mills required to cover the budget and determined by the dollars that are needed by these taxing entities to fund their services. For each mill of the mill levy, you pay $1 per $1,000 of your assessed valuation. So to calculate the value of a mill, we take the total valuation of the taxing district, divide it by 1,000, and we get the value of 1 mill. Knowing the value of 1 mill will allow us then to calculate the mill levy. This is just an example of those numbers. The total valuation for Rawlins in 2012 was $30 million, $30.9 million. Divide by 1,000, and the value of 1 mill is $30,930. So for the mill levy, you look at the budget that's needed by that taxing entity, divide it by the value of the mill, and that tells you how many mills are required to cover that budget. So if Rawlins County needs $2.5 million, we divide that by the value of that mill, which is $30,000, and the mill levy is 81.08. That will then allow us to figure out the property tax. We take our assessed valuation, multiplied by the mill levy, divided by 1,000, and we have our property tax. So in this case, our assessed valuation was $8,050 times 8108. Divided by 1,000, we pay $652.69 for Rawlins County's portion of the mill levy. So lots of reasons for change in property valuations, which then can lead to a change in the mill levy. I guess the change in assessed valuations will cause a change in the value of a mill, which will then cause a change in the mill levy. So this just kind of the flow of what happens with that. increase or decrease in a taxing entity's budget will also change the mill levy. So what happens when the valuation increases? We change the value of the mill, which will change the mill levy. Does this have an effect on the property tax? If property value has went up 75%, that home that was $70,000 is now $122,500. Your assessed valuation then is higher, and it's $14,087. You figure that all out, and your property tax is still $652.69. No change in the property tax. If we decrease the property valuation by 25%, we get our new numbers there. The budget remains the same, but our mill levy spikes up to 108. But our property tax stays the same. This just kind of summarizes the 3 different mill levies with all same property tax. So what happened to the property tax when the mill levy changed? Stay the same. Why didn't it increase? There was no change in the budget or the level of services provided, so.
Wouldn't it make a difference if different classes of property change? Let's say that that's what you're looking at possibly in this county, if the oil or natural resources increase the value of some property, but the person's house in town stayed the same. The $70,000 house didn't change in Atwood, but the real estate out wherever there's oil doubled in value, tripled in value for purposes of taxation. Then that house would potentially, if the budget needs of the county stayed the same, you'd mix it differently, wouldn't you?
Correct.
It would tip the scale very little. It'd move it, but not much.
Correct.
But you're just assuming that all values change by
Right.
the same percentage,
Which I
could be
understand.
that's a simple example.
Yes, but it just kind of is just
To get the
to,
math down,
yeah.
that's a good example.
yeah. I could be here probably 2 or 3 days if I tried to figure out a whole bunch of different scenarios,
I
but
think it's important to realize that assets don't all move at the same
Correct,
direction,
absolutely.
at the same speed, and I don't know whether the system really captures that very well. And I don't know how that appraised value, that's where you start. You know, my house has appraised value. I get the reports as it juggles a little bit every year. And that's where the variation would occur between asset classes is in the appraisal. Once the appraisal's set in the county, it would seem like the formula would just kind of roll on through after that.
and so,
Values. When your house goes up in value, the mill levy stays the same, your taxes are going to go up. What causes the fluctuation is mill levy, your total county assessed valuation. For example, 2004 to 2010, the county lost $10 million of assessed valuation on ag ground over that period of time. Since 2010, these ag use values have gone up. We're back now to where the values were approximately what they were in 2004. All, right, the state sets the value for ag land on a per acre basis based on use. The price of a barrel of oil that we utilize to get the assessed valuation of oil is set by the state. That fluctuates dramatically at the market from one year to the next. So it causes all these fluctuations. And the valuations of houses are highly inflated now. So people are seeing the value of their house go up. Like I said, all things equal, if mill levy doesn't change, then your value goes up, your taxes are gonna go
But
up.
the mill levy should only respond to the budget needs of the taxing authority.
Exactly.
Correct.
So if the taxing authority doesn't change its budget, and there's more assets to spread it over, the mill rate's going down.
And taxing authorities or taxing entities are under statutory caps, you know, how much revenue they can generate from one year to the next. So in essence, the valuation goes up, then the reality of no more revenue is needed from the previous year, mill rate is going to go down.
Then my tax would go up.
So then we'll look at what happens when both the valuation and the budget, the services provided, increase.
Kind of where we were going.
Yeah. So let's just say they decide, this taxing entity, for this case, Rawlins County, decides they need just a little bit more. We'll just do a moderate increase of 25, or 10%, sorry. We have our new assessed valuation, or value of a mill. We get our new mill levy. We take our new valuation, our valuation multiplied by the new mill levy, and our taxes went up a little bit. In this case, we bumped the budget up a little bit more. They've got a bigger project they want to take care of. The mill levy went up a little bit more, and the property taxes went up a little bit more. Just kind of a summary there. In this case, it increased, and it increased because the budget or the level of services provided increased. So then I wanted to see what would happen if we have this big increase in valuation and we leave the mill levy right where it is. This is just kind of a reverse of the other equation, but that's the amount that we could then generate with that same old mill levy that we had. But it makes property taxes increase 75% too. So I'm guessing that the county would like to have more property tax revenues. I don't know if the constituents and the population would like to pay more in property tax revenue. Or property taxes, that's something that, counties have to figure out. So in general, there's increasing responsibilities for local governments. There's high public service expectations. And so local governments are looking for ways to raise revenues and at the same time control expenditures. There's 4 major revenue sources within the local control: property taxes, sales tax, user fees, and intergovernmental transfers and aids. Sorry, I should have showed those a little bit sooner. Problem with the property tax is there's increasing public dissatisfaction with the property tax, but it's a major source of revenue for Kansas counties. The sales tax sometimes is met with opposition from citizens and local businesses, thinking that it will hurt their competitiveness. But the sales tax also is a significant source of revenue for some counties. User fees are becoming somewhat more widely used, but it's important that it's distinguished between what services are subject to user fees versus what services should be available to all. And so I think the attempt for user fees is to kind of pay for what you use, but that doesn't always work out quite as well. Intergovernmental transfers and aids, things like grants, that often requires quite a large commitment from the county, and then that's revenue that's only available for a short period of time. There's no real optimal mix each county is different, and so each county has to work hard to figure out what is going to be best for them. As far as controlling expenditures, we can cut spending, reduce or eliminate services, but then that can affect local government employees. If some services are cut, then that also affects your community and your constituents. Delaying infrastructure maintenance might seem like a good idea sometimes, but usually it's more costly in the long run to rebuild it or replace it than to maintain it. Changing how services are provided. Sometimes departments can be consolidated. You can collaborate with other governmental agencies, things like that. And then it's important to try to look at the long term. What is going to be happening in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Where do we want to be? And then effective use of debt. Debt can help spread the cost of the asset or the infrastructure over a long period of time. So people who use it now pay for it. People who use it 10 years from now pay for it too. And so this is just a few summary numbers of what we saw earlier. And stuff that I'm pretty sure you guys already know. So, again, thank you for having me. And if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them. And if you come up with a question later, I think you can probably send that to Jo and she'll get in touch with me.
Can you go back a couple slides?
Sure.
There's one number on there that is a little deceiving, I think, and it's that go forward one. It's that per capita property taxes, because that is based on the county population, right?
Yes.
And a lot of our property taxes are coming from people that aren't in that per capita, with people that don't live here owning property. Absentee landlords. I mean, there's lots and lots of them. So it's a little bit deceiving because our number was fair. I mean, a rural county is going to be fairly high, but so
Population decreases and taxes and absentee landlords go up, so that number goes up.
Yeah, that is correct, right? I mean, because it's
Yes.
the per capita is the population.
Right.
Okay.
We just take the total property taxes divided by the population, and that gives you your per capita number. We've had the same question, in fact, my county, Riley County, the commissioners asked, is there a way to distinguish, the property tax payers that are in the county versus ones that aren't in the county? And that's not data I would have. Possibly the county appraiser would have that. They could sort by the addresses or something like